So there's a lot of videos out there complains about how bad is Genshin, but I wonder how many of them actually get mHY's attention, because that's the nature of language barrier, and that's why I'm here. The solution that nobody has been asking, and a solution that would probably doesn't work. I could complain about Genshin with CN subtitles, because in fact, my Chinese is better than my English. Let me prove that to you all. 早上好中国，我喜欢吃冰淇淋，也喜欢吃小猫咪，而且是很多只小猫咪。So Genshin Impact has been receiving more shit than monkeys throwing shit at their predators, but I've also enjoyed the shit out of Genshin for the past 1.5 years. I don't think the game in itself is as bad as what people claim to be. I think the game is actually pretty good. Even from today's standard, it's just that people would turn themselves into this niche picking mode and exaggerate everything that looks wrong to them. So I do think that there are some levels of self-fulfilling prophecy, but I also know exactly where it's coming from. It's the resentment toward the negligence to players' complaint, the lack of quality of life improvement, and the exploitative monetization strategy. So the sentiment of Genshin is bad. It's rooted from frustration to these problem and not really about the game itself. Like recently, Whirling Waves has been announcing the preset system. That player base has been asking Genshin to do it for like over the past 4 years, and for not a while ago, for the first time in Genshin history, the double limited banner. Not only they put Murika and Citali together, they also happens to be most synergistic unit to be paired together. There's no justification for that other than trying to suckle the money out of your pocket. It is straight up greed, and there's no other way around it. So the main reason I start Genshin is because I was so impressed with the quality of the Honkai Star Rail that I wanna try out of mHY's game, and I download Genshin with the mindset that I'm gonna delete this game within 2 weeks, but ends up playing it almost 2 years. And I've been 36 starring the Abyss, like doing chore at this point. There was this Abyss a while ago that it was so favorable to the Natlan characters that I almost couldn't made it. It was before the Murika and Citali patch. I kind of have to time my ultimate to dodge the attack that could have one-shot me, and deep down you know that it is engineered for you to pull for the current banner. I do love all the challenge and difficulties that comes along with the game, but it shouldn't be designed around how to get player to swipe more credit card on this current banner. It should be designed around good build, good team comp, and good gameplay. And it's definitely not a good feeling to get the taste of the intention behind the level design. And it doesn't just happen in Genshin, it also happened in Honkai Star Rail and in Zenless Zone Zero. The other huge issue is power creep, which has already been discussed in so many videos, so I don't have to reinvent the condoms here. But I do think that legal or not, when power creep happens too quickly, it's a form of scam because it takes away the value of the characters that players spend time pooling for or saving up for. I even made videos about it on how to combat it, and you can already see the answer from the thumbnail. Just skip more, because I really do believe that you don't have to fall for the FOMO that mHY try to feed on you. And it seems like the new FOMO meta that they have just evolved is the hard synergy characters that you gotta put 2 of them to pair with each other. They designed these characters to be mid or straight up trash if you don't put them together, like Fireflies and Ruanmei, Murika and Citali, or Shilonin. Zenless Zone Zero also has that, but not to the extent that recent Genshin and Honkai Star Rail do. I would argue that most of the characters in Zenless Zone Zero could work just fine by themselves, and they're doing all of that at the worst time possible, cause they got a lot of really strong competitors, like Wuwa is the obvious one. The Girls Frontline 2 is also doing great. Arknight Enfield, and this highly anticipated game that haven't released yet, and Nanta, which is led by the same company with the Marvel rival by the way. In the market that is so competitive in the gacha space, and it will become even more competitive in the future, they choose to respond the market with making their game more miserable and feeding even more FOMO onto the player and makes it less favorable for player to come back to play the game. They are actively giving more reason for player to leave Genshin. I think this is not only bad for the player base, but it's also a bad business decision. I don't know if there's some kind of 200 IQ strategy that they intentionally make Genshin worse so that player could move to their newer game like Zenless Zone Zero or HSR. But do you really think that leaving your game because it sucks is a good reason for them to play your other game? You gotta be extremely delusional to think that your game is dominant enough to be invincible in the current market. And what even more surprising to me is they are doing all of this after Da Wei cries about it, promised that they will make the game better. And I see none of those promises happening, and it's even heading backward. By become more greedy, patches after patches. I did actually have faith on Da Wei when he cried on the stage, because if he cared enough to act it out, they should be care enough to fix it. The audacity to break this promise is just so comedically shameless. This seems like the only thing that you could trust is the action. You could only earn the trust and respect by actually fixing the problem that player has been complaining for years. And do you know what are the easiest home run that they could do? The preset system is the obvious one, just like Wuwa, and the schedule material grind. They should make all the material available for any days. And there's no technical issue because player could already have it when they don't log in for 2 weeks as a returning reward. Just make material grind like Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero. It's just right beside your office. And for the traversing problem in Genshin, they could have just made a bike just like the one that Muvika is using as an item, and it could climb, it could run on waters, it could glide, and you have to get off the bike to fight the mob. So there would be no stamina problem on the combat. But no, cause they gotta pay wallet behind the new Netland characters. And the other home run they could do is skippable dialogue. The one in the main story are kind of justifiable, but the daily quests and the side quests are just straight up lame. Like, why do I have to keep smashing the button over the same line every single day? Which is the problem that Zenless Zone Zero and Honkai Star Rail also have. And I don't believe that is the technical problem. It's been solved 20 years ago since RPG is out. mHY has absolutely zero excuse for that. It's the created problem, and they sell you no solution. And I think it's because of some kind of weird quota that they have, like some amounts of playtime per login, and they decide to make it unskippable to stall your time that way. But you should be keeping player in the game with content and not stalling mechanics. You are stalling with the expense of players' loyalty to your game. And as soon as they get sick of it, they would quit the game. I still genuinely enjoy the game, even though I'm fully aware that mHY has been spitting on my face from time to time, but at the tolerable levels. With all that said, I just want to play the game and has fun out of it. It's like eating at the McDonald's. You don't really care if they are an evil corporate or not. You just want to eat your burgers and fries. And I do really think that people undermine Genshin as a game. It is still objectively good. You could argue that it's not the best gacha game anymore, but it's still a good game from today's standard because they have been playing it for over 4 years. You're gonna inevitably get bored and burn out. As I said before, I start Genshin after Honkai Star Rail, and I've just finished the Bellabao storyline at the time. It is undeniably the peak of the story in Honkai Star Rail, and I got addicted to Genshin after I experienced that, and it seems like I'm not the only one that feels that way. Mr. Pokey also makes videos about how he enjoyed the Genshin impacts, and I really do believe that anyone who started Genshin recently would have felt that way. And I couldn't stop playing it until the Inazuma Archon quest with my team that is made out of 4 stars. I used Beidou as a tank and Barbara as my main DPS, and Xiangling to apply the element and use Bennett to buff. I did 8 a lot of shit in the Abyss, but I do have all the fun with the main quest. And by the way, my favorite Archon quest is Inazuma one. I know that it got a lot of shit. I think it has the best journey and the best cutscene, but probably the undeniably bad ending with the power of friendship. And I'm still enjoying the Genshin up to this day, because there are just simply too many content that I haven't catch up yet, like most of the legendary quests. And it's also because I play other gacha game too, like Zenless Zone Zero and the Honkai Star Rail. And here's the hot take. If Genshin is not inherently good, then they weren't so many people plays it. You could argue that it's the pandemic buff, but out of all the game available, they choose Genshin and keeps playing it. And I could imagine that somebody in the comment began typing, "The only reason that you think Genshin is good game is because you haven't tried Wordling Waves yet." I actually did play Wordling Waves. Not only I spent a good hundreds hours into it, I also made some videos out of it. And in fact, my first video that reached 5,000 is actually about Wordling Waves. But I believe that 2,000 of it are coming from Hekjuice reacting to it. Well, thanks for that. I was like 38 subscriber at the time. And I also get my first 20,000 on this video, which I also makes fun of Braxophone in the video, and I'm not sorry about it.
mHY is the free-to-play healer. mHY is the GOAT. Most important thing about mHY,
白鸡 white chicken.
And I think I've been playing it enough to figure that it really is not my cup of tea. I don't feel a loss of control during the combat. The combat feels kind of clunky to me, like the counter system. You could parry it with both skill and normal attacks. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I do know that there are people who actually enjoy the intricacy of it, but not really for me. And the exploration do feels like playing Genshin, but with different graphic. I know that exploration in Wuthering Waves is better than Genshin, but I have Xianyuan as C1, and after I get her C1, Genshin feels like a completely different game in terms of exploring. But if you have to get a C1 limited characters for better exploration, they are probably doing it wrong. So the exploration in my Genshin account isn't harder than Wuthering Waves. I don't really see much differences in terms of story between Genshin and the Wuthering Waves, but Wuthering Wave definitely has more superior cutscene, and I'm saying this after I experienced the Changli story quest, and I don't even have to play the game to acknowledge that the cutscene in the Wuthering Wave 2.0 is a banger. I've quit Wuthering Wave before they fixed the echo grind problem, which is not really exactly why I quit either. And I haven't spent a single dime on the Wuthering Waves as compared to all the monthly I have in the Genshin, so it's gonna be harder for me to quit Genshin and join WooWa, and it's gonna be really easy for me to quit the WooWa. I just want to point that out. And if I want to speak about experience of playing Wuthering Wave as compared to Genshin Impact, I did have more fun with playing Genshin more than I have with Wuthering Wave. Even though I could acknowledge all the quality of life improvement that Wuthering Wave listened to the player base, but I think all the quality of life change, all the listening to the player base, and all the generosity, it only works for people who initially enjoy the game. Those wouldn't work to the players who don't enjoy it in the first place, like me. I wouldn't care all the quality of life change. I wouldn't care how many pools they give for the player for free if I'm not their target audience. But it's gonna work on people who initially enjoy it and give them more reason to keep coming back to the game. And I think this is what Genshin has to learn from Wuthering Waves. Not only they try to feed you with all the FOMOs like the double limited banner and design the abyss in the way that is specifically for the current banner, they also keep their created problem there in order to stall the player's time and not listening to the player base at all unless Wuthering Wave release an update that pressured them to do so. And keeping all these created problems that shouldn't even be there in the first place with expense of players' love to the game, and it will run out as better game keep introducing to the market. I'm not saying that they should, but they could keep all these time stalling mechanics in the game because they were the most dominant game in the market, but with a direct competitors like Wuthering Waves, I don't think Genshin is at anywhere near the dominant position anymore if I were to talk about this in the business sense. And I think the other game that was in similar position with Genshin is Overwatch. They once was the most dominant FPS game on the market, but they keep shooting themselves on the foot, not listening to player, and take advantage out of players' loyalty to the game. Like YouTubers comes up with a crypto scam. They shit on who support them, the most. Not only they don't listen to the player base, the game get worse patches after patches and eventually collapse when Marvel Rival released. And I think Genshin is also heading toward the similar path, except that it's not too late for them to fix their game. There's still a turning point for Genshin. And the last thing I wanna talk about the Genshin is that they gotta fix the probability of their banner like ASAP, cause WooWa has already makes it 100% on the weapon banner. They're apparently more generous than Genshin. And I also want to point out that Genshin was the most generous gacha game back when it was released. When you actually compare the game with other old school gacha game, like some other gacha game don't have the guarantee system. They even have this ranking system where you literally have to swipe your credit card to push yourself to the top by spending on the energy to do so. And Genshin doesn't have that. But 4 years has passed, now they are the greedy one, because they refuse to catch up with today's standard. So if I were to describe Genshin, Genshin is the restaurant with my favorite food, but they keep giving less and less proportion amounts of food and charging even more over time, even though the price and the proportion are still tolerable. But I could see myself coming back to this restaurant less or even never come back if it breaks my tolerant levels, especially when a new restaurant opens right next to them give a better deals, like WooWa. So yes, even though I still enjoy the Genshin, I could see myself uninstalling it pretty soon if they keep heading on this path, and I do think that there's no reason to shit on other games to validate the game that you are playing currently. I think both Genshin Shrill and Kurobot are equally toxic. If you don't like the dish being served on the table, you just turn around and leave. You don't have to pick a side and shit on other games and die on that hill. And maybe we should learn to appreciate other good games, even if they are not exactly our cup of tea. As a player, I think the whole WooWa and Genshin thing isn't that complicated. If you get bored of a game, you just quit before you start hating it. In fact, quitting a game is the most powerful thing a player can do to show developers that they're doing something wrong. And you don't want to do it to send a message, you want to do it just because you simply get bored of it, and that's what the game is supposed to be. It's just like eating a burgers. If you like the taste and the deal, you keep coming back, but if the food isn't good, the deal isn't worth it, or the staff is rude, you won't go back. It's as simple as that. You don't sit in the restaurant and complain about it, you just leave. Don't let the game company's bad behavior ruin your day. And I think I'll keep playing Genshin because I still have fun out of it. And if mHY doesn't fix the problem that I've just mentioned, I could see myself reaching the point of getting bored and tired of the game much sooner than it's supposed to be, and I will quit it at that point. So yeah, Genshin is still good, but the monetization and the quality of life sucks. That's all I wanna say. See you guys.